Hello everybody, can you hear me? I guess that is as far out as it goes. How's the audio? Can you guys hear me? Oh, 5x5, very nice. Welcome. Howdy. So, let's see here. How do I do this? Cancel. There we go. Evening, morning, afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome. You're live. All right. Doesn't get any easier pressing the go live button, I can promise you. Yeah, so welcome. I thought I'd do a little live stream today and share some things about the research and the Heartstones and tell a little bit of stories and say thank you to so many of you who've been along for this ride. You know, it's not something that I really planned on doing. It just sort of happened along the way, the creation of this channel. And I certainly, when I started, didn't think I'd be here 4 years later talking about the same stuff and finding new things to talk about all the time. So, hi Sherry, hi Aurorian, Bernie, welcome. Debbie Steele, Brian, nice to see you, Brian. Yeah, thanks. 20,000. It's been an interesting journey to that number. I think it took about as long to get that last 1,000 as it did to get the first 10. So that's interesting, especially since all the numbers have been higher. But the new subs to the channel has been very, very slow. Hi, Dragonfly. Thank you. Yeah, so today I've got a whole bunch of stuff on a notepad here that I thought to talk about, and I'll just start going down these one by one. And then what I thought we could do is just do kind of a go through of a lot of the things that I've covered in many different videos. And those of you who have been with the channel for a while have certainly seen some of this this research and the evidence, the empirical evidence that I'm going to be presenting for you today. And I'll talk about the different different categories of investigation that I've done with regards to these stones, and then we'll just we'll look at some different different things and answer some questions that I've been getting from a lot of people, and yeah, so hopefully have some fun in the process. So when I first started this channel, it followed, I had been looking into the subject for between 3 and 6 months, and had come across a whole bunch of unusual anomalies when it came to the mountain, Mont Go, and I made a 6-part series called Unveiling a Titan that goes through that research and shows all of the different anatomical coincidences that exist with this mountain that shouldn't be there. You know, it's one thing if you're looking at something and it kind of looks like a face, you know, and it's got the outline of a body and kind of looks like an elephant, you know. But usually it would stop there, and that would just be pareidolia. But because I have a friend who's got very unusual ideas, and he shared some of them with me and caused me to start thinking about the nature of our physical reality in a different manner. It led to all kinds of different discoveries when it came to this mountain also. And the more of those that stacked up, the less likely it became that it was coincidence. And then along that way, so when I made the first video, I had planned to do 5, and I already had all of the data and all of the images, everything I wanted to share for the first 4 videos at that point, and an outline in my head. And then I went to Denver with my friend Alex Michael, conspiracy music guru, also known as the Flat Earth Man, and incredible musician, very good friend. Shout out to you, Alex. None of this would happen without you, and turnabout is fair play, as they say, so I got you back a bit with the wild and wacky ideas. And so it's been an interesting journey for both of us, and at some point I'll share more of some of the different stages along the way. Hey, 13th Monkey in the house. Mike Tokayo. Yeah, so I went with Alex as his sidekick, really, to Denver when he performed at the Flat Earth International Conference, and that was an incredible event. Got to meet a lot of people whose channels and videos I'd been watching for about a year before we went, maybe a bit longer, and had an incredible experience with meeting so many wonderful, open-minded people, and there was a lot that happened at that conference that stories for another time. But while I was there, I was talking a bit about this research that I had begun doing, and the different anomalies, the coincidences that were stacking up. And I talked to some people who I have a lot of admiration for, who are good, very good researchers. People like Bob Nodell and Cami and Rick Hummer and David Weiss. And I was sharing just little tidbits of the things that I had already found. And this was before I ever made a single video. And I thought they're going to think I'm crazy. But of course, it was a Flat Earth conference, so that would have been a little silly, right? But they were really positive and encouraging, and suggested that I make a video. So I did that. I came back and made that first Unveiling the Titan video. And it was well received from the beginning, and a lot of people had very good things to say about it. And I was really surprised by the quality of the comments, the positivity, and the caliber of the writing. It was not like a bunch of nutcases that are like, "Yeah, I can see things the way you do," and they're just. It was thinking people who were contemplating things that are very, very alternative and would be considered absurd to most people. Yeah, so that encouraged me. I came back and I started working and struggling with editing software and everything, and that was quite a challenge. The 90-second Unveiling a Titan promo video, which has been at the beginning of a bunch of my videos, took me a week to make because I was learning the software, but it was a good way to get into it. And then eventually I started doing other videos. But the whole thing would have come to a stop, because it's not like I keep discovering new things, or I've got a whole bunch of other Titans that I've got lined up to give a bunch of evidence about. And I would have done those initial videos and then kind of left the whole thing behind if it wasn't for these things, which now I've made probably 20 different videos on. And it all began with this rock, which I found in a river bottom, and I've done a lot of videos talking about this, and all of the different anatomical features that this rock exhibits that are identical to heart anatomy, this being the aorta opening and the vena cava. The white fatty outer layer is called the pericardium, and everywhere that the white is worn away, it's red inside and under that. And then this fatty line here, this is called the what is that? I can't remember the name of the fatty line, but this would be the left atrium and the left ventricle, and then there's a line here right where the corona the coronary artery goes, the coronary opening. This is called an isthmus. There's a whole bunch of anatomical features in just this one rock. That number's up to almost 25 now. I've gone in with endoscopic camera down into the chambers, and not only are there chambers there, but they're not quite what you would expect to find with water erosion, but rather they're bumpy, and that's consistent with what you would expect to see with heart anatomy, just as is that isthmus. And then those bumps there in each of the openings are what I believe are the papillary muscles, so the muscles that contract to open the valves of the heart. So there's a whole lot going on with that one. I got an endoscopic camera, looked inside, like I said, bought a microscope that's sitting over there that is a 1000x microscope, Wi-Fi, and I've looked at a lot of these. And even though some of them are bone white, when you get up right next to them and you start looking at the grain of these things with the microscope, you can see that even though it looks very, very white here, it takes on a very fleshy look. You can see the fascia and the meaty quality of it, even in the white ones. But when you get to something like this, especially if you wet it underwater, and I'll do that with some, not this one because it's so big, but as soon as you get that wet, it starts to look very much like flesh. This is also very meaty looking, and if you dip that in the water, you can see that it looks more like a hunk of meat than a rock. So the whole thing began with this one, and I came back to my office and I pulled out the anatomy books for the heart and started to go through in detail with that, and found a whole lot more coincidences than I ever would have expected to find in a rock that matched heart anatomy, which was just totally mind-blowing to me. And then I decided to go out into the field and see if I could reproduce it, right? Because that's the whole thing with the scientific method. You make an observation, something in empirical reality, and you start to try and categorize the observations, right? And see if there's any kind of consistency to them, and if there's any kind of a pattern that starts to emerge, and is that pattern reproducible? And that's the whole point of it. So I made a couple of videos, one called Mud Fossils, the Heart of the Matter, and part one, that was just going through this first rock here that I showed you. And then I made a second video, Mud Fossils, the Heart of the Matter, part two. And that was back when I thought these were mud fossils. I didn't quite understand how it could be the case that they would be mud fossils, because why would you find a bunch of hearts outside of the body? It didn't make any sense to me. But I found the first one, and there were so many anatomical coincidences that lined up with it. And I'd already been introduced to this idea that petrification could happen far more quickly than we were, given any idea. That there were lots of examples of that in the geological record, of things that shouldn't petrify based on, what we were told. Hey, Derp. Hi, Sherry. They shouldn't, like soft tissue, we're told in the mainstream model is eaten away by the larvae and the bacteria that decompose the body, and so all that's left that fossilizes are your bones, basically, except in the rarest of circumstances. So for that reason, I think most of us are taught not to recognize these patterns. If this is really a thing, and we'll go into these in detail in a moment, that these are actually petrified organs, then a lot of the things that we were taught about geology are upended, right? So it's not something that the mainstream geological model will take in anytime soon. And so I've gone through a lot of different steps. First, I was just looking at the outer stones, then I'm going inside with the endoscopic camera, the microscope. I sliced them open. We'll look at some of those. I've already made a video called Slicing Heart Stones. Polished them with a grinder and then all kinds of different degrees of sandpaper. I've broken some open. I made a video called Broken Hearts Tell Tales, and went out into the field, found the exact same kinds of rocks exhibiting the same patterns that I've been teaching people to recognize in my videos, break them open, and sure enough, inside a lot of them basically look like they're bloody and meaty, and yeah, and a couple of them I really wish I'd brought back because they were such amazing specimens, and it would have been interesting to do some testing. I've had a lot of people that have asked me about DNA analysis. I have no budget. I'm in the hole on this project. 4 years and thousands of hours of my own time, and YouTube revenue is minuscule. So I don't have a product that I'm selling yet. I have a book that's coming out soon. Maybe it'll lead to some book sales, but it's on a completely different subject. So there's a lot of people that are like, you haven't done any science, you've got no data whatsoever. There's no proof. And I'm like, well, I've got empirical evidence up the wazoo. I have a repeatable pattern that is incredibly specific, that matches the anatomy of hearts in a whole variety of different details. And I've had, I spent 400 euros of my own money to have them CAT scanned. That was kind of a bust because the rocks themselves are so dense that it's, like if you look at an x-ray, all the soft tissue will be dark and then the bone will be white, because the bone is, I can't remember what's happening with the radiation as it's hitting, but basically the soft tissue is going to be dark. That's why people do MRIs, so they can see the soft tissue, like for herniated discs and whatnot. So because the stones are so compact, because they're stone, you can't really see much of anything. You can see the chambers that I already knew were there before I took the rocks in. So it wasn't. I didn't make a video about it because it wasn't the most exciting thing, and I need to buy the software just to be able to view the images again. It's kind of annoying. There was a cardiologist who contacted me who was really interested in what I was doing and totally on board with the conclusions that I had about these stones. And I thought I would get an analysis from him, but he went through a whole lot of struggle during COVID over a lot of different things, and so he prefers to remain anonymous. And we have contact now and again, and maybe he'll change his mind later. But so these people who are like, you've got nothing, there's no evidence whatsoever. They haven't really gone through and reviewed anything on the channel. They're just having knee-jerk reactions based on preconceived notions about what is or isn't possible. And that's something I talk to people a lot about, is we're not taught to recognize this. If this is a real phenomenon, we're not taught that a stone could have a front and a top and a back and a bottom, and that those correspond to something that it was before it became a stone. Mainstream geology talks about these and says that these are what are known as polycalcitic conglomerate cobbles. It means they have a variety of different kinds of calcite, and cobblestone is like what you see on the pebbles on the streets when you're walking down these old villages, the streets of these old villages, you'll see these cobblestones. But their mainstream story is that those are basically lumps of clay that got compressed inside of other materials, and that created layers, or that created these shapes. And I reject the notion, because there's so much repeatability and specificity to this phenomenon. All of the different hearts of the different species of the creatures, they're all different designs, but they have more or less the same design. But you've got 3-chamber and 4-chamber hearts, and you've got long, narrow ones, and you've got big, fat, thick ones, and you've got globular ones, and they can be shaped like this. This is like a miniature version of what a giraffe's heart would look like, to the T. I've got pictures of giraffes' hearts in a number of my videos. So you can get these long, narrow ones, and then you can get bigger, rounded, fat ones, and I show pictures of an elephant's heart. But in general, what they all tend to do is have this kind of harp shape, and like the musical instrument, and harp, heart. I think it's interesting those words are so close together. Um, and there's your aorta and vena cava openings at the top. So that one rock is exhibiting probably 8 to 10 different anatomical features, just this one rock. Some of them, exhibit a ton of features, and others just kind of have that overall shape, and they're pretty, nondescript. I'll get into the chat a bit later, and we'll do a Q&A and everything. But I just wanted to bring these out again because this is my office. I work here adjusting people, and I can't exactly have these out, filling up the waiting room. So they tend to go into the closet, and then the longer they're in there, the more I start to kind of forget just how much evidence I've gathered in favor of this theory. And you can see that even, see my finger here, when we're getting down to these smaller sizes, all of the detail is still there in these tiny little rocks. It's the exact same pattern reoccurring. And you can see the indentation there at the top. That would have been where the blood vessel would be. This one's shiny because it was in my pocket for a while. You can see a chip is missing from it. Put them in a pocket for about 2 weeks, and they polish up very nicely. You don't have to run them through a tumbler. But you see that shape, and we'll talk about that in a minute in more detail. But yeah, so I kind of got sidetracked. It wasn't what I was expecting to be doing with my time, and the more I got into it, the more things just started to line up, and the more synchronicities began to occur, and that's really when I start to take notice, because when there's synchronistic events, I see that as a little tap on the shoulder from the Creator that, hey, it's time to pay attention. There's something going on here. Maybe maybe things aren't the way you think they are. But honestly, if it hadn't been for these heartstones, I would have left this whole thing behind that first year, because I came out with a 6th unveiling a Titan video, and reported on the fifth had to do with the eyeball and the optic nerve, and then the 6th was looking at the terraforming of this region, looking at what I believe is a Titan artery, like a channel, a cave that's got a huge layer of crystal going through the whole length of the channel, and those are all things that I've shown as I've discovered them. But it's not like I'm making a whole lot of other discoveries. There are caves in other mountains around here, that some of which I've yet to explore. But really, I thought that by now there'd be other channels that would be doing this kind of research, and taking these photographs that everyone's posting of Titans, where it looks like giants, laying on their back, and it's a whole mountain range, or these bodies in different positions, and going into the the caves that look like eyes, or exploring it in more detail. But that hasn't really happened. There's just been like you've got Roger and Tyson. Tyson boots on the ground, looking at what he considers to be Titans that are the size of a continent, I guess, and Roger Spurs something similar, with the dragon in the Sahara eating the fish, and yes, Nora, you're always allowed to make stupid jokes. Nora, I met in Denver, actually, and I started talking to her about this, and she practically laughed me out of the room. I think she tried to laugh me out of the room, and by the end of the weekend, because she kept coming back to me, she's like, all right, tell me some more, because this is just ridiculous, and by the end of the weekend, she's like, maybe. And then I produced the first video, and somewhere along the line, I think she got on board with with the Titan elephant and the heartstones. But she was a tough nut to crack. And then Analog just said something. Analog is a friend, Ben from the Discord. We've shared a lot of discussions and conversations, and I want to do a stream with him soon. And Mike, we've got some things to talk about. What other skeletons are in my closet? I don't have skeletons in my closet. I just have petrified organs, you know, lots and lots and lots of them. Yeah, Bernie, I saw I saw one of the streams with Andreas. Yeah, it's fun to see you guys talking to each other. So, yeah, I'm a weirdo. Let's see. Where should we go from here? Let me look at my notes. Yeah. Maybe this would be a good time if anyone's got any questions. So for me, you know, a lot of people will just hear some kind of crazy idea and then they'll just run with it. And there's not a lot of discernment. They don't do much in the form of research to see if there's any truth to it. They just kind of knee-jerk reaction. Yeah, I'll buy that, you know. And I'm anything like that. When it came to Alex and, you know, him talking to me about Earth shape and whatnot, I was like, no. It took me 3 to 6 months of digging and digging before I was even really ready to talk about the subject with people much. And that's probably because I've gone through about 10 years of the university indoctrination system, degree in classics, and then later a degree in chiropractic. But one of the first things that I thought of when the flat Earth subject came along was this is an incredible teaching tool. Like, what a great way to teach kids, you know, the scientific method, how to exercise discernment, the differences between you know, empirical studies and actual reality that's founded in something that you can observe and experience or measure. So I was surprised to see how much pushback there was. I mean, this is, you know, one of the unquestionables. There's certain things you're just not allowed to talk about or question, and if you do, you're suddenly a nutcase or a radical or, you know, some whatever. So I approached the mountain as an intellectual exercise because I saw this, you know, I'm well aware of the concept of pareidolia. My artwork is really based on you know, this understanding of abstraction and how different things can start to emerge from patterns that you know, are not necessarily there. Like, some people see a little house here that's deep inside of a bamboo forest, and other people see a little face like a monkey or something looking back. I called this one Praying Mantis. And wow, I just totally didn't even think about that piece of art right there. And maybe you can see the mantis there. But here's the interesting thing. So another reason, aside from all of the empirical evidence that has caused me to, you know, continue with all this, there's also been loads and loads of synchronicity. And that's really where I'm just like, okay, I'm being called to talk about this. There have been many times where I would have liked to just leave it behind, and it's, you know, it's not a subject that I take up lightly with people. So I'll give you just some examples of little synchronicities that have happened. I've shared this one before. So I got off of a conversation, or I was just about to have a conversation with my partner, and she called me, and I don't know if you can see this because of the lighting there. I'll just put it there. And so then I'm walking down the sidewalk and I see this stone like that, and I turn it over, and it's got the intraventricular sulcus line. There's some detail there that maybe you can't pick up, and then there's even a little indentation at the top where the aorta and the vena cava would have been. So that was just a synchronistic thing that happened in relationship to a phone call. This was another one. I found this one buried down like that. You can see that shape. And this I immediately recognized as the backside. And so I dug it out, and you can see that it had a whole bunch of stuff caked to it, which I just left on there. But it's got this faceted front. And and that is something that is an aspect of this whole thing of what is ultimately, it's not proof based on some kind of instrumental experimentation like looking at, say, spectroscopy or something like that. This is looking at this is pattern recognition and repeatability. So we have a scalability. It goes from tiny up to very, very big, same exact pattern. We have it occurring across lots of different colors of stone. So it's not just a particular kind of stone that just happens to break off and erode in this way. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that I'll go into in a moment. So another synchronicity was this one. This happened a few months back. I shared this in a stream. I was walking on a hike, and I just like had this question of like, God, am I on the right track? Should I just leave this stuff behind? This hasn't exactly been easy on my professional career or family life, because they're all like, they can't really stop me from doing it, but it's not like any of them find this particularly interesting or see the importance of it. I don't really understand that people don't understand that if this is actually true, I don't see how they can't understand how important this is. This means that major fundamental things about what we've been taught about the nature of our physical reality when it comes to geology and stones are not right? So that's a big deal if that's the case. And if titans are a thing, then the question is like, how could they have forgotten? Oh, well, it's just myth. We're all blinded by the paradigms that we grow up in. So, titans are just a fantastical story, but they didn't actually exist. But if titans did exist, and the people who've told us that they didn't, and give us all kinds of, sci-fi fantasy tales, and they present, things like NASA and SpaceX presenting space as, this is the final frontier, then a lot of the things that we learn about our physical reality may actually be inaccurate. So I think, like, for example, I talk about mining titans. If titans were once a thing, then they're actually creating a lot of the different substances that people are mining. And it's found in the titan bodies, and then you have the great trees as well, which I'm more convinced of the existence of the great trees than I am about the existence of titans and heartstones, if you can believe that. And I'm constantly referring to the works of Hangman 1128, because his footage is self-evident. And that's the thing. When something is self-evident, it is what it appears to be, right? And you can be taught that it's not that, and grow up believing it's not that. But if it is that, and it, if these are actually hearts, then it's self-evident that they're hearts. And the footage that Hangman has related to the trees is self-evident, in my opinion. It is the evidence. And they can dance around it all they want in geology and say, hey, no, this is just pareidolia. He's just seeing this pattern, and that's not actually what's happening. What's actually happening is a whole bunch of creatures are dying and getting compressed under the seafloor for tens or hundreds of millions of years. And then that's creating these layers that are then broken up, and that's what we're seeing here. And I no longer believe that at all with the trees. So the trees to me is incredibly important, because if people can wrap their head around the trees, then something like this is a bit easier to swallow. So going back to this one, so I put out this question to God, like, am I on the right track? And literally the next thing I saw when I looked down, because I was looking up in the sky, and I'm like, oh, God, just, am I on the right track here? And I looked down, and on the road in front of me is this. And it was kind of a metaphoric representation for how this research has affected my life in some ways, because this was sitting on the ground, and there were skid marks over it, and you can see the tar from the from the tire marks, right? So this thing got dragged along the ground, and it was the only rock on the road. It was just this one, and it's got a whole bunch of these features. This one, I had a wonderful conversation with Mike from Hangman 1128's channel, and as I was walking, and I turned the corner on a place I've walked hundreds of times, and I looked down, and I don't know if it was exposed by the most recent rain, but that rock I found right while I was having a conversation with him. So another synchronicity. And going back to the praying mantis thing. So today I was walking with my partner and found this one. And there was a whole string of bizarre synchronicities that happened in a row that I was not expecting. So the first was I was walking down a trail where I was in a forest, and the and as I was walking through the forest, a snake crossed my path. It was a little small snake, and it's just goes across the path. Happens very rarely. In the 10, 11 years that I've been here, only a few snakes have crossed my path in all these years. So that was immediately something like, oh, paying attention, like, well, that was interesting, So then I'm walking up the hill, and I get to the top of the plateau, and there's these windmills up there, and I met her, and I found this one on the ground just before I met her. It's very fleshy. This one's a little more fat. They can be fat or they can be flat, and I think that has to do with how the body comes to rest. In fact, if the body is crushed under a great weight, you can find these and they'll have lines going through them, and I think that that's because the ribs are compressing the heart at the moment of petrification. I'll show an example of that. So you can see here, same pattern, right? Knife edge on one side typically, and then the other side will be fatter, and that I can show that over and over and over again. And then at the top you'll have the blood vessels. Well, here it's instead you've got this crease going in. Now this, to me, does not look like it broke off and is just eroded. This to me looks like something pressed in on it when it was soft. And I know there are people who will say, well, you can't know that, and well, that's true, I can't. But I can find a whole bunch of them that don't look like this, and this one I kept because to me that's the only explanation that makes sense, is that it was coming up against the rib cage when it happened. So so then I met with my partner and we're talking, and I'm gonna forget something. There was like 6 different things that happened. So just before I saw her, I saw butterfly, and my thought, butterfly flew by. Flutterby flew by. Why don't they call them flutterbys? I mean, really, that is the that's what they should be called. Anyway, I immediately thought of the metamorphosis, Ovid's metamorphosis, and just this transformation, and then I thought of MK Ultra too, Project Monarch, because I'm a suspicious guy. But so I saw that, and then she arrives, and I show her this little heart that I found, and start talking about synchronicity. And then right there in the middle of our path, and I filmed it, there was a big praying mantis that was sitting on the trail. And I've lived here 11 years, and I've only seen 4 praying manti. Is that what you say? Praying mantises in all of these years. And they're just so fascinating. I mean, you need evidence of alien creatures here without having to go out to space. There you have it. Those things are pretty darn alien, and they look very intelligent. But anyway, so I got up and I filmed it real close, so I might share that in another video. But so then she tells me, oh, that's so weird. I had this dream last night, and there was this object that I was looking at in my dream, and that object turned in to a praying mantis. So this is, in the space of 15 minutes, this is a snake crosses the path, there's a butterfly, maybe they don't mean anything, but then we see a praying mantis. She's had a dream last night about a praying mantis, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to talk about synchronicity, and then and then I'm telling you about these synchronicities with these stones here, and I totally forgot that I have a praying mantis right there on the wall. And this gets back to what I was talking about with abstraction in artwork, is that it's really easy to see things that aren't there. Like, for example, a lot of people see a woman here. If you turn it sideways, it looks like she's sitting cross-legged. If you look at that way, but it's just a swirl, it's just color moving around. So anyway, it's when you start to have lots of empirical evidence, and that's also lining up with things like anatomical correlations, but also you're getting a bunch of synchronicity, that's tapping you on the shoulder and guiding you. So those were just some fun ones. I've talked about them a lot. So I suspect one day you'll be known as Titan Mike. Yeah, I coined the term Titanologist just tongue in cheek, because I figured there's no academia for this, because according to mainstream science, Titans are just myth, right? They didn't actually exist, and there's no evidence for them, and you'd have to be crazy to believe such things. So maybe that's true, or maybe not. And so I also coined the term biogeology. I get a lot of heat from the Roger Spur lovers from Mud Fossils University, because they think I'm trying to steal his thunder, and I should give him praise and pay homage in every video I've ever made. But like I said before, when it comes to these, they don't make any sense based on mud fossil theory. And so that forced me to start to come up with theories of my own about how these could be created. How can a heart petrify? There's so many different ideas that have been thrown my way. Some have thought that, oh, maybe it was some kind of a widespread ritual where they were moving the organs and somehow knew how to turn them to stone. Which I thought was comical, but also ridiculous. And so why the organs outside the body? That's probably one of the most common questions I get asked, and I've made a bunch of videos. I call it boiled egg theory, and the idea is basically through some kind of a cataclysmic process involving great heat or electricity or plasma, that the outer portions of the body have been destroyed while the organs themselves have been protected in these fatty sacs, and then they're in a bigger fatty sac, which is the pleura, which is the chest and abdominal cavities, and that as the outer portions of the body are being destroyed, these are hardening like boiled eggs. They're wrapped in a very, very thick fatty layer called the pericardium, and that layer is the thickest on the heart of all of the different organs. There's a man who wrote me a comment in one of my videos that said that when his dog died, he put him on a pyre, and it was this very hardwood oak. It burned extremely hot for 36 hours, and in the end, all that was left was ash, and then a clump of what he thought was ash, and he poured some water on it to make sure that it had, that it was out, the fire was out, and it revealed the heart, which was remaining there, and it was very, very tough. And I've heard similar stories from people who work in where they cremate bodies, crematoriums. So you can see here, this is a chunk that's broken away, and look at how fleshy that is. This is one of those ones, if you put it in water, it comes alive. See how red that is? So this is not oxidization because it's been exposed to the elements, and that's why it's a different color than this. This is a different layer than that, and I've got other rocks where you can see the layer. It's not just changed color because of oxidization. So another stage of this whole journey was I got contacted by some guys that were in connection to a laboratory, and they were curious about these stones. The guy who owns and runs the laboratory is very reputable, and he's prestigious acclaim, or whatever you would say, and so he seemed like somebody who was really genuinely interested. So I sent off a dozen of these to their laboratory, and made a whole video about that and their findings, or their claim of findings, I should say. So one of the things that reoccurs over and over again is this line. This is called the intraventricular sulcus. And in the thumbnail to this video, in the lower left-hand corner, there's a little set of hands holding a heart, and those hands are the hands of Francisco Torrent Guasp. And he's showing that the heart is not what we were taught in school. It's actually what's known as the myocardioventricular band. You can literally unravel a heart into a flat, long band. And so when the electrical impulse that causes the muscle to contract it goes from one end to the other of the band. But because of the nature of how the band is rolled up, like in a knot, there's certain lines where the fibers are meeting, and those are called sulcus lines. And so this was another massive coincidence. You can see the remains here of this line, and on the backside as well. So on the backside, there's often two going down like this, and on the front side, there's one going in a curve like that. And that is, the helical heart. Somebody just mentioned it. I've made a video about that called helical hearts, petrified organs, and synchronicities, because it was an incredible synchronicity to discover this. So someone talked about the helical heart in the comment threads and said, "Oh, the heart is a rope." And I didn't know what they meant. And then later on, somebody repeated again and mentioned these two are twins. Look at how similar this stone is to this stone. This is what I'm saying: scalability, repeatability, all sorts of anatomical correlations that shouldn't be there if this is just a chunk of a rock. Now, the critics will say, you're cherry picking, you're going out and you're just picking rocks that meet your theory. Well, actually, it happened the other way around. I found a ton of these stones and they didn't make any sense. Initially, I thought they were mud fossils, but mud fossils work by being surrounded by mud, and then what's in the mud is leaching into the soft tissue and turning it to stone. That's mud fossil theory in a nutshell. It's called paramineralization. And that's recognized by mainstream geology as well. That's how petrified trees are said to form. The heart is a magnet. It's definitely vortexing, and the work of Francisco Torrent Guasp proved that not only is it a myocardioventricular band, this flattened thing with little twists that makes it function like a toroid, but it also the blood itself is not being pushed out, but being suctioned in. And it's suctioned in like a vortexing spiral. So the heart is so incredibly far out compared to what we were taught in school. So the basics of what I've been showing people are you've got this harp shape, right, and often a flattened or curved underside. One side will be like a knife shape oftentimes, and the other side will be thicker, and it'll be a flattened top, and often there will be creases or indentations or actual openings where the biggest blood vessels of the body, the aorta and the vena cava, enter and exit the heart. So in addition to that, you get these sulcus lines that I've already been talking about. You'll get the fleshy look, you get the white outer shell, but they can take on many different forms. These are just the stones in this region that I live in, right? They're not. I haven't traveled outside of this region since pre-COVID, so I can't speak with any kind of authority about what's going on in other parts of the world. I can only speak about what I've seen here, both with the mountain and with the stones. Having said that, I have a Telegram chat that's set up where people who are interested in sharing their finds can go there, and I'm not in there very much because I'm drowning in social media already. But at least people can share and talk with each other there, and every once in a while I dip in. But those are some of the examples that people have sent me are more beautiful than many of the ones I've presented. The specificity is what really makes it. When you've got the blood vessels there, you've got the things like this isthmus and this opening and the papillary muscles, and you find that, oh, here's a big harp shape again, and there's the isthmus, and then there's the opening, opening to the, so then if I just looked at this from the front and I see this tapering and curving, that happens because of when the heart goes into contraction, it actually twists like that. That's another very specific feature that these stones regularly are exhibiting. But here on the backside, you can see there's the sulcus line, and then you've got the aortal opening right there again. So that's about a 10 or a 12 at least in the what I jokingly took to calling the Wilkerson scale, because this is not, I'm not the first to talk about petrified hearts. Michael Tellinger had a video before, and a guy named Alan from Mudflood and Was Armageddon, he had been talking about it as well. I hadn't seen either of those videos before I found this one. I'd seen stuff from Mud Fossil University, and then, I found this one and I sent him a copy of the video, and I'm like, you're welcome to use that, and he didn't. So I'm like, okay, well, if he's not going to do it, I have to do it. So I did it, and then I went out and I started to find others. This one is really beautiful. You see that knife edge and that curved underside. Now, looking at it from this angle, I would expect there to be some kinds of openings or indentations at the top, and guess what? Right there, right where it should be. So, cherry picking in the sense that for every one of these I brought home, there's probably, or brought to my office, there's probably 100 that I've left that also match these patterns. So, in that sense, cherry picking, because I've focused on the hearts because they're the most distinct. They're the easiest to spot, even though the heart can be round and globular, short or long. All of these different shapes, the basic anatomical features are going to be the same. So if you're finding that in spades, in stones, chances are they might be hearts, right? Even though we're told it's not possible, and that soft tissue only in the absolute rarest of circumstances can petrify. But we know from people like Girolamo Sagato that he knew in the 1800s how to turn different kinds of flesh to stone. There's examples of petrified tree stumps that got hit with high tension power wires. There's places like Mother Shipton's cave where they hang things in the cave, and within months they're starting to become crystallized and hardened. Same goes for Lake Natron, really high mineral content waters in this, I can't remember where it is, Lake Natron. Creatures fall in these waters and they don't come back out. So there's lots of things that suggest this is possible. It's not such a harebrained idea. Some of them are even dark, and I think this may have to do with species that have a different color blood from ours. But you can see the incredible, exquisite detail of this stone. And again, there's your blood vessel openings at the top. So it should be very hard for me to find this sort of a thing reoccurring over and over again. Different theories that other people have presented in contradiction to mine. Some have thought they were teeth, and I don't believe they are primarily because of the interventricular sulcus. And what I mean by that is if you're thinking about like a canine tooth, the sharp ones that are tearing the flesh, they're one piece, and there's none of these lines going through the tooth. Molars have the lines, but the molars are four sections, and so you've got that, it's like four posts, and so there I would expect to find lines, but not in the canines. So I don't think they're teeth for that reason. Also, some of them are very, very thick. There's another guy who's been suggesting that these are flower petals, the ancient flower petals that have petrified, and I reject that idea also because some of these are very, very thick, and if that was a flower petal, I don't know, maybe in some other antediluvian world there'd be flowers that look like that. So I don't think that it could be flower petals. Another guy said that, oh, these are lumps of lava that got ejected into the air, cooled on their way down, landed, and then they just took on this shape. And I think that's also pretty silly, personally. Here's another one, just like almost identical to this. So there's another really important distinction. There's your sulcus line again, and there's your blood vessel openings at the top. Couple of other ones. So some are black, which I think is fascinating. My friend Howard's collected a bunch of black ones, and you can see it's the same pattern over and over again. It's my handprint there. But like this is where you got to exercise discernment as well. Like this looks like a heart stone, right? It's got that harp shape. But I absolutely do not believe that this is one of them. And the reason is very simple. Those lines right there. I believe this is far more likely a chunk of one of the great trees, because this is exactly what all of these are doing. And I would refer to Hangman's research for that. But I'll show you what this looks like under water. So you can see the banding there. This is not what I would call a heartstone, even though it's shaped like a heartstone. So even a broken, fragmented piece of rock can still erode and take on this form. I'm not disputing that. But to say that these are that, if you dip these in water, none of them have this banding. When you see this sort of thing, I believe that is probably chunks of either tree or larger tissue or something like that. But it's not. These are all encapsulated. They're like one piece. And as soon as they're broken, you can see a difference. Like here, for example. So that's not focusing. Hello. There we go. All right. So you can see the fleshiness there. And that piece broke off. If that piece was there, what would the rest of it have looked like? It would have looked just like all these other ones that I've been showing, right? Here's an example of what I'm talking about. As soon as there's a break, look at this, totally gray. You break it open, and look at how fleshy that looks. And if you look under with a 1000x microscope, like I've done, you'll find that it looks just like meat, especially something that's this red. You see the fascia, you see the meat. Here's one that's broken open, and you can see the blood and the remainders of the chamber. And then when I sliced them open, polished them, so you got the white outer portion, and look at that. See how meaty that is in there? Now people are thinking, well, you expect to see chambers like openings in here, but if you actually look at videos of them slicing hearts right down the middle, the chambers are far smaller than you would expect them to be. But this side I didn't polish because it's showing this either blood vessel or chamber remains right there, and everything else about it is that same pattern. And sometimes the blood vessels are white. Here you can really make it out. And yeah, so when I sent these stones off to the lab, I got no data back. I just got opinions, and all of those opinions towed the line on the mainstream narrative without addressing any of the research that I'd presented. So this one here is one of the ones I sent to the lab. The other half he kept. And so he called these polycalcitic conglomerate cobbles, and the basic idea is that it's clay that has been compressed in a softer layer that then erodes away, and this pops out, and then the river action and the rain and that finishes smoothing it out, and that's how they take on this shape. And and so I think he kept this one because this was probably one of the ones he could use to best make his case that this is just clay. But it would be really interesting to do like a blood test or DNA analysis. So if anyone has connections to laboratories or a bunch of money and they want to spring for that, fine. But I'm not going to do it. So yeah, I'll check in with you guys. How's everybody doing? Should we keep going? I've got more to share. Oh wait, there's the chat. Where'd it go? Hello, chat. There. All right, let me just back up a little bit. So, amazing. Cognitive dissonance, yeah. So I talk about paradigm blindness. You know, you've got an expert in their field. They've studied this for years and years. They're the person that somebody goes to when they want to authenticate ancient artifacts and make sure that they're authentic. And so a person like that is, you know, got a lot more of their ego wrapped up in the conclusions, right? Especially if their income depends on it. Yeah, so paradigm blindness, if I'm right about these things, if these are really petrified hearts, then clearly, you know, many people around the world who are deep into geology have missed this. Do these heart rocks feel heavy or light? They feel heavy and they're hard. They're not like hard like a sapphire or diorite or diamond or anything like that, but they're, I don't know, they're a couple steps down in hardness from those things. Some of them can be very porous, but that has to do with water erosion. Salt water starts to pockmark them, and I should have examples of that here, but I don't. So, something about the petrification process that negates rot. Yeah, I think it also probably happens very quickly. That it's maybe even instantaneous. And yeah. Probably a lot larger in their fleshy form. Not necessarily. They're going to contract when we die. The heart goes into contraction. So the heart muscle needs oxygen in order to relax. So as we die, the fibers of the heart are actually going to go into contraction, and so you're going to get that twisting, and that's why so many of these exhibit this twist at the bottom. It's like a propeller, right? So that's because of the nature of the heart fibers that are contracting. I can give lots of examples of that. That one's not so obvious, but so those are incredibly specific finds. See that twist there? Yeah, so I don't believe they're teeth. I don't believe they're lava globules that were ejected into the air. I don't believe that they're just random stones that have broken off of larger pieces and rolled around and just magically eroded in this way. That makes no sense to me whatsoever based on the empirical findings. And yeah, so that is what I think of that. The huge trees burned. Yeah, there's so much to ponder. I think that they were mining the titans, they're mining the trees. I think maybe some of the tunnel systems around the world were actually root systems that have been mined out. Who knows what volcanoes are? I think a lot of volcanoes, they look very much like large level mining waste and slag heaps and that sort of thing, which ties into the research of a guy named Mike Ferreira. The trees were a thing, titans were a thing, in my opinion, and so were the ancient miners, and they were mining on a scale that we have a hard time even grasping. Yeah, so let's see. Just look at my notes here. Repeatability, scalability, specificity, right? I've got this list of the Heartstone coincidence list, and there's like 25 different features on there. The top 7 are the harp shape, the curved line on the front, the 2 curves on the back, those are the sulcus lines. The top, the indentations for the blood vessels, the twist at the bottom, the faceted front, the curved backside. They can take many, many, many other shapes and forms, but those are the most distinct. Those are the easiest to spot. They're the most geometrically significant. And in fact, I'd like to at some point do a 3D rendering. I bought I bought that platform over there with the intention of doing that. I got I've got green fabric, and I was going to mount these things and then record them in video as they're spinning, and get high definition, really nice coverage of all of these different stones in 3D. And then someone could take that and they could render it into CAD software, plotting key points, and actually use that as a way of seeing if there's some kind of a geometric significance in the way that these are manifesting, even if they've been altered by the petrification process. And that goes back to what I was talking about before with the DNA testing. My suspicion, even if I had a test to do, is that it's probably not going to come back positive for DNA unless it's a really wet specimen, because likely whatever caused it to turn to stone was so powerful that it's going to denature the molecules of DNA. So whether they would find something or not, I don't know. Yeah, so scalability, specificity, predictability. There's been several times where I've seen things that were partially buried, and then uncovered the rest of it, and it was like just what I expected to find. That shouldn't happen if it was just random chance and these were just rolling around. Um, Slicing them open, breaking them open, the lab work, endoscopic cameras, microscopy, CAT scan. People who say that I'm just, this is conjecture, this is all speculation, I don't have any scientific evidence. What's your definition of evidence? One man's one man's evidence is another man's anecdote, right? So yeah, and then I've categorized them by different types as well, and so I don't believe they're conglomerates. I don't believe they're globules from volcanoes. I don't believe they're shark teeth. That was another one. If you look at shark teeth, they do kind of have the same shape, but the upper portion where the tooth fastens into the jaw of the shark is a completely different kind of material than the main tooth itself. So you wouldn't expect these to be uniform with the same kind of material all around if they were shark teeth. So if you look at these and then you compare those to shark teeth pictures, I don't believe that. Yeah, so then, this gets back to Occam's razor. We're taught one set of beliefs about these things, but if we see them and we recognize, oh wow, these are exhibiting, these anatomical features, and we start to look at it and we find over and over again that it's repeating itself, then that is, yeah, that's, then it's possible that it may actually be that, right? Occam's razor, the simplest explanation, being, all things considered, being most accurate in most cases. Paradigm blindness, the trees, things are proof of concept. I've just shown it to you. And logical consistency. So my scientific evidence is not based on an experiment, because there's nothing to experiment with. People could take these into a laboratory and do different kinds of tests. I'm not qualified to do that, but there's nothing to modify here. These are already as they are. So unless somebody can take a heart and petrify it and prove that it's possible, then this will stand still for a while as far as the research goes. So back up a little bit. What is the composition of the heart stones, like minerals like salt, calcium? That was what I originally wanted to know, and that's why I sent them to the lab in the first place in New Mexico, because I wanted to find out what is the breakdown, of the different elements that are in these stones. Because if I can get a percentage breakdown of, oh, it's got this much calcite and this much iron, and these different constituent components, and get those by percentage, you could compare that to a fleshy heart and compare it to these stones. And if there is a similarity there, that would just be a huge, a huge proof in favor of the theory. The What I would expect to find, though, is some kind of a transmutation occurring, because it's obviously gone from flesh to stone, so something has changed, and so as it goes through that process, there's likely to be an elemental shift in one way or another. So I would expect there to be a list of elements, and then this list might have similarities and other things that are maybe just off by one element, like, oh, this one has one more electron or one more, you know what I mean? That was what I thought was going to happen in New Mexico, and instead I got a survey of what 100 people thought the stone looked like. Literally, that's what I got. It was a joke, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. So, and then they tried to make me look like I was in it for money, and I was all of these things that I had already addressed in all of my videos. They didn't bother to watch those, I guess. Yeah, so composition remains to be seen. Minion, what was that? Minion makes a portable USB DNA sequencing machine for €1,000. Sounds interesting. Happy to put it to use if someone wants to send it to me. I think the trees are more cellulose, fibrous, of course. This is why humans get cystic fibrosis and don't do so well, I'm supposing. I don't know about that. But the trees have everything in them, just like we do, I believe. It's this whole, the part contains the whole, as above, so below, as within, so without. Hangman has shown all of the different ways in which the sap is manifesting. There's two different kinds of sap. There's phloem, and I can't remember the other, but there's sap that goes in both directions in trees, just like the blood does in our hearts, right? We've got our venous blood. There's these spiraling opposing vortexes that this is what Francisco Torrent Guasp discovered, and I've talked about that in the Helical Heart video, and also in the video Son of a Titan, where I met his son. His son came here, and I showed him all of these stones and talked about what I discovered and the theories, and so I made a video about that encounter, which is pretty interesting. So live in a strange realm, that's for sure. Keep positive love energy. Would that not be like rock PCR? Yeah, exactly. I want to test a Titan kit. Silicon sand in deserts or remains of tree waste. I believe a lot of it came from the trees. And when you see Hangman's footage and he shows you all of the different ways it decomposes, it just turns, especially the giant cedars, they just turn right to sand. Agates from the liver or something like that. Watched a vid the other day. Yeah, I've talked about that. Agates and all of the different stones that form in the body, like gallstones and kidney stones. I think if you look at them and you look at them in cross sections, they grow like rings of a tree, and they have a geode quality. So I wouldn't be surprised if geodes have a biological origin as well. Do you think that it's possible? Yeah, I mean, spectroscopy is an expensive thing, but this guy owned the lab, so they reached out to me. They were the ones offering analysis. They were the ones who offered to pay for samples, and I rejected that because I just wanted the data, and then I got no data. So I made a video about that with all of all of the correspondence and the phone calls, and it's a 3-hour video, and it's well worth watching if you're interested in the scientific method and how somebody with really alternative ideas that don't match with the mainstream beliefs can be handled when attempting to have some kind of a, mainstream confirmation of what, what I'm saying. Walter Russell, yeah, I've been digging into Walter Russell stuff lately. Whew. Listen to the book that he wrote on light, audiobook twice. That was just amazing. Yeah, and Ben, Waking Up with Analog, he's in the chat. He's got a great Twitter account, and he's got thousands and thousands of old articles from, the earliest stuff from the newspapers, and they're constantly talking about petrifaction and gigantic creatures, and, he's just found so much stuff. And yeah, some of it may be conjecture, or not conjecture, but just, fantastical imaginings, or people just trying to, fool other people. But when you read these articles, they have a ring of truth to them. Many. Hangman just posted a new video. Cool. Yeah, I'd like to have a conversation with him. He's hesitant to mix his findings with mine, which I can understand, because his findings stand alone and he doesn't need confirmation. But if the giant trees are a thing, and when you go through Hangman's footage, you realize they are, it's not, sometimes things are what they appear to be. And if you go through his stuff and you reach that point where you just know that they were, that's when other things start to be possible as well. Like titans or petrified organs, because obviously those trees aren't here anymore. We have the tree stumps, which are mesas, and maybe not all of them were stumps. Some of them might be mining waste. Some of them might be who knows what. You have all the post piles, the like Devil's Post Pile and Devil's Tower, and it's always interesting. They call them devils, this and that. But so I think that that's clearly the fiber of the trees. And translucent pool. Andrew Kaufman, legend, total hero. I don't know the other names of those other guys. Yeah, so let me just show a couple more things here. I think I've covered most of what was on my my list so far. Yeah, so some people might find this repetitive. Not nearly as repetitive as some other channels, right? I don't like wasting people's time or going over the same thing over and over again, but there's something that I learned when I went to chiropractic college, and it's especially true of motor skills where you're, using your hands to adjust or something like that, is repetition is the mother of knowledge. So sometimes things need to be repeated before people get it. I talk with people about posture all the time, and they'll be sitting there hunched forward like this going, yeah, I get it, and I'm talking to them about posture, and they're shaped like a C curve. So it's one thing to kind of initially understand. It's another thing to really grasp the significance and importance of something. So yeah, let's see here. So I showed, this is one of my favorites here. This is a beauty. Blood vessels at the top. And you can see the sulcus line there. And that sharp thing and the curved underside. This one here is remarkable. There's your interventricular sulcus line. And look at how meaty and fleshy that one is. Super thick, definitely not a flower petal. Yeah, so there you can really see the sulcus line clearly. And the one on the back side as well. Yeah, so... this is, I wanted to show these. So people are always asking me, what about the other organs? You're just finding hearts and they're just outside of the body? Like, it makes no sense. And they just immediately dismiss it without actually seeing the research. And so obviously when it comes to something like a kidney shape, you know, if I've got a stone like this one with 25 different anatomical correlations, I don't look like such a crackpot talking about this being a heart potentially, even though it's 4 times the size of a human heart, right? That our heart's about the size of our fist. Um, and you know, so if you've got something that has all of those specificities, then it makes sense. But if I were to just grab, you know, a random rock like this one and say, wow, that looks like a kidney, right? And it's got that indentation right where the kidney has the blood vessels. That's a kidney. Is it really? Or is it just like one of a trillion different rocks that you could find down on the beach, right? The so finding a disc-shaped rock that's shaped like a spleen that you could skip across the water, or finding a kidney-shaped stone is very easy. But to claim it's a kidney, that's a lot harder to do because it's so nondescript. It's not specific at all. You don't have a whole lot to go on. This one, however, does. You've got the indentation there, but this one, see these lines here? If you look up an image search and you search for medullae renale, MEDULLAE RENAL, you're going to find that exact same shape. That's how the inner portions of the kidney are actually shaped. So that was an interesting find, and there's lots of examples of these stones where they're just shaped like a kidney. But it's not just a, you know, piece that's broken off. It's literally an indentation that's right there. So yeah, so kidneys, spleens, lungs I think are destroyed in the process because they're so porous and they're so light compared to like the thick density of the heart muscle and also the pericardium. But yeah, a lot of people have asked me for a long time about what about the other organs, and that's my answer to that. So you can see that they come in all shapes and sizes, but I don't bring them home very often because they're not so interesting to display, and they're probably likely to create more questions in people's minds than answers. But you can see I could just go through rock after rock after rock. There's another one. There's another bag there. There's another bag in the kitchen. These have blood vessels in them. And I don't believe that this is erosion because of the way it's fractal. So like a little creature that maybe is eating in might go down a line, might even change direction, but it's not going to be like a tree-like branching. What would that mean? It's gone down the line and then it's come back and then it goes another direction? I don't think so. So I think it's a lot more likely that these are actually the remains of blood vessels. It doesn't happen very often. I don't have a lot of rocks with that kind of example. But here you can see more what I'm talking about. It's the same exact thing. And then there's a bigger example of it. Yeah. One thing, after watching a vid on flat irons, I was talking about them in a live stream the other day. The flat irons are just amazing. Clearly tree, if you ask me. What part made those things, and what really weird is how they... Okay. Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey. I'm not sure exactly how, much more I can do with this. It's going to take some other people stepping up to the plate that have access to laboratories, have moolah, if I get a good vibe from people, I'm happy to send some examples, and continue with it. But as far as scraping up the money to do DNA tests and do this, that, and the other thing, spectroscopy, which can run in the thousands of dollars, I don't have the means to do that. I was talking about synchronicity earlier. The Francisco Torrent Guasp, the guy that discovered the myocardial-ventricular band, when I saw his videos and I realized that a lot of these stones that I had already been collecting and showing had these lines in them exactly where he was folding up the heart. And like I say, the thumbnail to this video shows the back side of the heart. When he folds it back up, there's two little curved lines going down. I've got a bunch of rocks that at the top, they've got two curves going down. How specific is that, right? And so I learned about that by watching these videos about the life of Torrent Guasp long before I realized that he lived and worked his whole life just on the other side of the mountain from where I am. He passed away about 15 years ago. But what a coincidence that this cardiologist that gave us so much knowledge about the human heart or about all hearts lived and worked his whole life just a stone's throw from here. That's just another crazy synchronicity. Along with the river name, where I found a number of these rocks, Gata de Gorgos, Gorgos being Gorgon, being the sister, the three sisters that were, one of which was Medusa. So it has to do with instant petrification. It's just like too much lining up. Sen's Sorcery Ship is something I had written down. Yeah, the mountain has been censored on Google Earth. That's an interesting thing. The 5th Unveiling a Titan video goes into that. And yeah. So I just want to, I want to say a big thank you to all of you, because really, if it wasn't for the comments that you guys have written and the encouragement, I would have stopped this a long time ago. I never would have made all these videos. There's been a few donations along the way that have helped offset the costs for me, and I'm really appreciative of those as well. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, and it's so nice to have these familiar faces each time I go live or premiere a video. You guys are the best, and people have commented on a number of occasions about the caliber and the quality of the kinds of comments that are in the comment threads. So it's a lot better. Every once in a while I show up on the radar and get a whole bunch of trolls in a big wave, and they just show how mindless they are with the kinds of comments that they make. So it's not something I take personally, but it's not fun when it comes in, because you got to deal with it, and you want to let people criticize and address the criticism, but if they're leading with insults and calling you a retard or telling you not to procreate or jump off a cliff or something, then banned. It's very nice that one button, and they can spend like a day writing some horrible thing to you, and you can just like. But I don't mind criticism, and if someone ever comes up with an explanation for how these things can be not something other than what I think they are, I'm open to hearing it. And what else? Anything else I should? Started watching late. Hey, Rourke. Cover the part where you can unravel the heart and it's like a rope. Yeah, we talked about the myocardial-ventricular band discovered by Francisco Torrent Guasp. Rudolf Steiner has talked a lot about the nature of the heart and blood flow, and I have some theories about the fact that the red blood cells are toroidal shaped, and I think that they're being propelled, electromagnetically or dielectrically or whatever you want to call it, through the bloodstream, because the model of the heart being a pump and pushing the blood out to the 70 trillion cells, that's been debunked long ago. Doesn't make any sense, and Francisco Torrent Guasp's work is self-evident when you see it for what it is. So sometimes things are what they appear to be, no matter what the rest of the world believes. And that's not to say that I'm 100% certain that I'm right about this stuff. Found this one just the other day. It's a beauty. And it's got those dents right there at the top. The dents won't be on the bottom. That's another, specificity. They'll be at the top for the blood vessels, but if I pick up the vast majority of these, there's no dents on the bottom point. It's just at the top flat part. So just another coinkydink for you. Yeah. So any last questions before I bring this to a close? I'm sure there. there's a bunch of things that I want to talk about that I haven't. Sleeping Elephant Mountain in Cache La Poudre Canyon in Colorado. Yeah, you know, this is the thing. People are posting all kinds of pictures of mountain ranges and claiming they're titans, but they're not doing any boots on the ground work to actually confirm that in any way. If all you have is a picture from one angle with shadows that are just right to make it look like a face, then what you have at that point is a possibility, but most likely it's pareidolia. Oh, thanks for the donation. I just saw somebody donated something. Any donations that are coming in right now, I'm going to put towards a drone, because all of the footage I have of the mountain is either my camera, my phone, and what I can zoom in, or Google Earth, which is, you know, not optimal when it comes to getting, you know, really good footage. So I think they're around 300 or 400 euros for a good drone, and once I get the donations for that, I'll get out and get some really good footage of the mountain. Some other caves yet to explore. Got a friend that I'll reach out to and do that with him. Six Sisters in Western Canada. Yeah, there's one mountain laying, looks like a person laying on their side, and there's two eyes that are exactly the right size in the right place, eye sockets. You would think somebody by now would have gone up and gotten some footage inside those, because that's the thing about an eye socket, is it's not just a cave. It's going to be a cave. If it really was the eye of a gigantic creature, it's going to have specificities inside that socket anatomically, and that's what I did in the second Unveiling a Titan video. I showed that, well, now it's up to almost 20 coinkydinks, 20 coincidences just in the eye socket alone, to say nothing of the ear. And the third video in that series, Unveiling a Titan Part 3, all about the ear. If the first two don't get you, the third one will definitely blow your mind and have you scratching your head. And the fourth one, as David Weiss said, was the nail in the coffin. He told me he hated me after that because I permanently altered his view on rocks. Yeah, Paul Cook has told me which drone he uses, so I know what to get once the money is there. But yeah, got other things I need to spend money on right now. Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate the support throughout this whole journey, and we'll see where it goes from here. The next couple months, I'll do some live streams on other subjects that are related to star forts and some other ideas I have, but I'm also going to be going into book marketing mode. It's something I've been putting off for years and years because I hate sales and I hate marketing, and it's not something I want to spend my time with. But I think the book I've written is very good, and if it gets in front of eyes, people will love it, and it has the chance of doing well, which would be great, because over the last many years I've been a student, and then for the last 5 years I've been focusing on all this stuff and trying to figure out the nature of our realm and our reality. So instead of focusing on making a bunch of money and buying a house, focusing on retirement, those kinds of things, hopefully my book will do well. If not, I've got a few others planned that I'll start working on, but I can't get myself to work on those until I've actually come out with the one that's already done. So hopefully in the next month or two. Any last comments before I wrap this up? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it, and keep your heart soft. They work better that way, right? A lot better than pointing fingers and calling people out, and a lot of what's been going on lately, right? It's all about teamwork. All right. Very good. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. It's a pleasure.